everyone, how's it going? 1 or 2 weeks ago, I embarked on this viewer participation project where I asked all of you to help contribute your thoughts on what you thought were the best design cards within the Mamba and Flashpoint cycles that were released this year. Suffice to say, I received an overwhelming amount of response, far more than I anticipated, and everyone gave a lot of good insight and shared a lot of opinions, many of which I couldn't conceive by my own. So to every single one of you who took your precious time to comment and share your insight, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. You have made this a wonderful success. So today in this video, as we celebrate the joys of the festive season, we will at the same time take a look back at this year and let's see some of the most well-designed cards that were printed this year. I will go through 8 of them in roughly in ascending order, but realistically the order doesn't really matter. What we are going to do here is to appreciate just how much good work and effort that the Netrunner designers have put into making this game sustainable and continue to grow for our wonderful community. So without further ado, let's begin with number 8. This is Freedom Through Equality. And this is a runner card that modifies directly the game win condition by allowing the runner to get 1 agenda point guaranteed for their own self. Now of course, this is usually going to be used in a combo deck more often than not. You want to only play it when you have some sort of card that guarantees an agenda access such as Spy Camera or Find the Truth, or an indexing which allows you to index first before playing Freedom Through Equality. What really makes this card a lot of fun and one that is probably well designed is that in addition to these guaranteed combos, there are some times where situations where you have to innovate, play, make some riskier plays instead of the sure gamble. Perhaps you need to quickly score, quickly get to match point, or maybe you just haven't drawn those enabler cards that you found yet. In those cases, you have to weigh the probabilities. Is it okay to play Freedom before making a legwork? And sometimes when you perform a single access and steal an agenda, you ask yourself, maybe I should have played the Freedom earlier. So Freedom's not a completely straightforward card. It's not a card where you only play right before an indexing. Sometimes you have to make a judgment call on whether playing it now is beneficial for you. Sometimes you need to make a gamble on a multi-access run, and when it turns out to work in your favor, you get a sense of satisfaction, pat on your back, a job well done, and this is what keeps players going. The satisfaction of making a skilled in-game decision, and this is what Freedom Through Equality provides. Rewarding guts and aggression. On number 7, we have Run Amok, the Anarch card that is the equivalent of Inside Job in Criminal. This is a lot more interesting and much less straightforward than Inside Job or Blackmail. The mechanic makes it really interesting, and honestly, this is what mainly contributes to its good design. Contrast that to Blackmail, where it's a simple matter of get the bad pub or play Valencia and then you can just get through the remote, no questions asked. That's not very interesting. In fact, that's pretty linear. Whereas in Run Amok, there are so many things that could happen, good and bad things alike for the runner. As the corp, when Run Amok is played against you, you have to make so many decisions. What if I don't have any replacement ice? Do I still res my ice and trash it at the end of the run? Is it even worth it to res the ice given that I'm going to invest money into it? Is the face check punishment enough? And do I need this server moving forward? There are lots of considerations to make when Run Amok is played against you, and the fact that it provides so many decision points for both the corp and the runner is what makes this card really interesting. It's also very well costed, and more importantly, it's very thematic. This is so Anarch. It really doesn't get more Anarch than this. So, a very lovely card, a well-deserved spot in the well-designed list, and fittingly, the first card to start off the Mumbat cycle. Pretty beautiful. In number 6, we have another Anarch card from the Mumbat cycle. This one's Baguette. Again, just like Run Amok, this one is incredibly thematic. Wanton Destruction is the name of the game in Anarch, and while this isn't as bursty as Wanton Destruction, it kind of has a similar effect, milling the corp and disrupting their gameplay in a unique angle. I say it's unique because of two things. Firstly, it mills the stack, R&D rather, and this is not something that you can easily translate into numbers. How valuable is that mill? It's very hard to gauge. This is an unknown factor that makes it really interesting and challenging as the co-op to play against. The other factor is that it triggers on a successful HQ run. We don't get too many of these cards in Amok, and every single one of them so far has been pretty good. Like Lamprey or Nerve Agent. It really forces the co-op to think about how to best defend against it, whether they need to, how to react against it, and as the runner it encourages aggressive play on another server, which is really cool. Netrunner would be really stale if the runner only had to focus on a single server. Cards like Baguette allow you to diversify and give you multiple angles of attack. This is quite cool. Not to mention that it is well designed because it is limited. It does not enable combo decks. You cannot abuse Baguette to completely mill the co-op out in a single turn or anything, because this only triggers once per turn. Combine that with its high influence cost, means that you can't splash it out of faction in a faction that can easily guarantee HQ accesses, such as Criminal, with cards like Feint and Sneak Door Beta. All in all, I really love the design of this card, and I do have to agree that it is not only somewhat powerful, but also very challenging to deck build and play with and against, making it a solid pick for this list. Moving on to number 5. We introduce the first card from the Flashpoint cycle on this list, Fairchild 3.0. This is the first 3.0 Bioroid, and it certainly has explored this design space very well. Every single subroutine poses a very challenging decision, either for the runner or the core. The 3 credits threshold is where it gets really interesting. Previous Fairchilds is almost certainly better to pay the credits than to trash an installed card, because an installed card is basically worth a click, possibly a few credits as well. But with Fairchild 3 credits is where it starts tipping the scale, right? It's like ESOPs. 3 credits versus an installed card is somewhat tricky. And same for the final subroutine as the co-op, doing 1 brain damage or just letting the run end. This is a decision that's not easy to make a lot of times. Do you surrender an access to disrupt the runner in an unquantifiable way, make them lose 1 card from the hand, potentially a very important card, and limit their options from this turn forward? This is what brain damage was meant to be. Not something to flatline the runner, but more of something to disrupt their gameplay and limit their options, and Fairchild 3.0 does that pretty well. More importantly, unlike most other Code Gates and Sentry Bioroids, this cannot be Hail Mary true. You can't simply say, I'm going to make a final run on R&D with my 3 R&D interfaces and let every single Itchy fire. You can't do that with Fairchild 3 because the core can simply say, end the run. So this makes it a very good defensive ice, and at the same time, punishing in face check value as well. A very lovely piece of ice. Solid. This would have been my pick for one of the best design cards of the year. It's really lovely, and yeah, what else can I say? Really good stuff. Moving on to number 4, we get to the popular section where we have lots of people commenting on the same card. This one's Sports Hopper, and it's loved by a lot of people, probably guys lovers, huh? What it really provides runners, and especially guys, is the amount of flexibility that cannot be rivaled by any other single card. It gives you card draw, it gives you a pseudo plascrete, it gives you a link that allows you to boost, that allows easier trace evasion, and also allows you to start accumulating cloud breakers. Again, while all of these traits are incredibly beneficial to guys, and is the reason why you play this in guys and not many other areas, or rather not with any other runners, it's still a card worth considering even if you're not playing Geist. Because of its utility, it is still a card to consider. And at the same time, it's not so powerful that it renders its specialized equivalents such as Plascrete and Rabbit Hole obsolete. So this gives the runner a very meaningful deck building decision. Do you play the more utility-based card such as Sports Hopper, or the more specialized card that gives you all the protection you need or all the link you need for a particular matchup? And it is this decision making and the in-game decision making. Do you pop the sports hopper for the card draw, instant card draw, or do you leave it on the table to accumulate the benefits of extra link as the game progresses? That is something challenging. That that lends itself to this being one of the better design cards in the game. Moving on to our top 3. This one's pretty popular. It's Polo and Councilman, tied for 3rd place because they are pretty much functionally the same. They disrupt defensive upgrades and some assets as well in a way that is rather unique. This is quite important, the fact that they are not overpowering. They are very well balanced by the fact that they are only one use, meaning that there is some way for the co-op to counterplay around it. Contrast this to Rumor Mill, where it is almost impossible to counterplay if your target in question is, say, a Caprice Nisei or an Ash. With this, the co-op can play around it, such as stacking multiple copies of Ash or Caprice in the same server. So, as a product of this, there is more decision making to be made on both sides. The runner cannot run a server with impunity, knowing full well that they will guarantee access. This might not be the case if the co-op has sufficient counterplay. And at the same token, the co-op has to put in more effort into doubly securing the server. While these are very strong counter cards to the aforementioned defensive upgrades, they are by no means the end all and be all. And this is why it is very well designed. It is very nicely balanced, and yet pushes the metagame in a direction that discourages the use of defensive upgrades. Not to mention, Polo, I need to give this a special shout out. Just like Baguette, it requires a successful HQ run before installing. So again, this diversifies the angles of attack for the runner. And as the runner, if you draw a Polo, you have to run the cost-benefit analysis. Is it worth it to run HQ just so I can get the Polo down? What is the value of the Polo in the long run? So in short, both sides have to ask themselves more questions, play around these cards more, and the end result is always more dynamic gameplay, which is always a plus, which lends these two cards to being pretty well designed. Let's move on to our runner-up. This is none other than Mongoose, the Criminal Breaker. I didn't really think of this at first, but so many people gave a shout out to Mongoose, and after a while, I could see why people said so. This breaker is well balanced for a start. It's efficient enough to see play without being an auto-include in all criminal decks. And that's quite important, because if that's the case, then there's a lot less decision making to be made on the runner side. Not to mention that playing Mongoose is inherently risky. How many copies of it do you have in your deck? Can you get past a triple stack sentry server? You probably can't if you're running Mongoose as your main sentry breaker, but you're not aiming to make it to that deep into the game. This kind of breaker gives you enough breaking potential to last you through the mid game, but nothing more, and it fits with the criminal feel so nicely. Something that just gets you in a pinch and does a pretty good job for the most part in the early to mid game, but falls off late. And this amount of risk is what makes the game interesting. Sometimes you have to brazenly run through a server having used your Mongoose and hope that the unrest ice at the end of it isn't a sentry. That ups the fun factor, ups the guessing game factor, and adds to the flavor of the game. It definitely is one of the most well-designed breakers in these two cycles, and is a solid number 2 pick in this list. There's only one card that can trump this, and honestly, I believe that card is very well deserved. Do you know what it is? It's none other than the HB card Advanced Assembly Lines. I love this card. I fell in love with it ever since it came out. And of course, this was one of the main economy backbones in my Jammy HB deck, which came out pretty shortly after this card was released. This is probably one of the most flexible cards ever printed in the game. It gives you so much utility, even more than Sports Hopper. It's a bit ridiculous. Of course, a lot of it is not seen at first glance. When you look at it, it's just, oh, it's money. What more? It's kind of like a cantrip. Well, if you think about it a bit more, if you play around with it, you realize that the possibilities are almost literally endless. Not only is it economy, because it is an asset by nature, it can become Never Advanced Bait as well. In the faction that has 6 3-2 agendas, this is perfect Never Advanced Bait. One that provides a lose-lose situation for the runner. If they don't run it, This becomes an Adonis campaign that begins ticking down immediately with no loss. If they do run it, the corp doesn't lose anything. In fact, the corp gains 2 credits and the runner loses a lot of credits for running through the server. It's such a nice win-win card. Not to mention that it's one of the best forms of Temujin defense, because you can install ice before the runner even makes a single run on that uniced server. And of course, as mentioned earlier, it allows you to install campaigns safely. This card has so many users, and is only perfectly balanced out by the restriction on the install. The fact that you cannot use it during runs or to install agendas makes it a lot less abusable, which is good, because if this becomes abusable, you only see HB decks that just try to milk this for its abusiveness, and then it wouldn't be a well-designed card. The fact that this is suitably placed on the power curve and not abusable makes it the perfect combination for one of the most wonderful cards in the game. It rewards creative deck builders that attempt to build around it. The obvious choice is to play in Engineering the Future, of course, but there are some other synergies with it. You play with Breakaway Grid, you can get a lot of discount of res costs. If you play in Near Earth Hub, you give rise to the Russian NEH deck, which is really brutal. Almost a bit unfun, almost a bit too strong, but it's a very good use of advanced assembly lines. You've got to admit, the fact that it allows you to draw an extra card when installing on the runner's turn is really nice. So all in all, the fact that it is such a challenging and rewarding card, both in the deck building stage and the gameplay stage, makes this a top pick, and my personal top pick as well, for the most well-designed card of the year. Looking at all these 8 cards and analyzing some traits, we see something really interesting. Of the 8 cards, all of them, bar one, were from Mambat Cycle. And this observation is really astonishing. So much so that it is definitely worth analyzing why this might be the case. And I came to the conclusion that for the Flashpoint cycle, while it has been mostly lauded as a cycle that has actively pushed the game in a healthier direction away from the scum of Museum of History decks that cause a lot of negative player experiences, unfortunately, this was done by the game designers by increasing the power level of particular cards, namely Runner Economy in the form of Temujin, and Corp Ice in the form of the big code gates, as well as various alternative winning mechanisms such as CTM, hard hitting use. So these cards are now all the more powerful, and as a result, less of well-designed cards actually. They're good in design in the sense that they push the game in the intended direction. However, when you talk about a card that's a hallmark of great design, why is it so? You look at all the cards that I've listed in this list, and one thing they have in common is that they provide small incremental advantages to reward players who exercise greater skill in piloting the decks. Not big swings in power like what Temujin or hard hitting use does. So this is not so much about playing the right cards as opposed to playing the cards well. And that's a very important point, a hallmark of good design. This is rather lacking in the aforementioned powerful cards in the Flashpoint cycle, which is why none of them made this list. And unfortunately, as a result, the game is still player skill dependent, don't get me wrong. It's not all about luck, all about drawing Temujin contracts or hard hitting use early. But it is definitely a lot that not only do you feel less satisfied, not only is it less satisfying to play these cards because the cards themselves just provide so much power. Another aspect is that for those who enjoy deck building, it's a bit less fun when you know that you're more or less shoehorned into playing 3 Temujin contracts in every deck because it's just so far above the power curve compared to a lot of the other economy options available. So this is something that has to be noted. While the games themselves are still as fun as ever, if not more than the Mambat cycle, the card designs themselves have gone down a notch. Another point of analysis is breaking it down by factions. There were no Shaper, NBN or Wayland cards present. NBN and Wayland are pretty obvious. They have to do with the power level. I won't delve too much into that. I've already covered a lot of that just now. Shaper's the interesting one. I feel that a lot of Shaper decks are very linear in the sense that you set up big breakers, preferably efficient ones, and then just go ham on R&D. That has been the gist of Shaper since the beginning of time, and this hasn't really changed. It is a very challenging design space, to be honest, because what can you do? Print better breakers? Print better economy? They've tried with some very interesting cards, and some cards that I almost wanted to put on this list, such as Out of the Ashes and Da Vinci. But Da Vinci wasn't in the combat cycle. Anyway, the problem with Shaper is that you can't really print better breakers or breakers that make use of recursion, because Shaper is rather saturated with recursion. Scavenge and Clone Chip are such powerful recursion tools that if you print cards that are even just a bit too powerful, like Parasite in Shaper, that would be completely bonkers with all the recursion they have. So Shaper is actually a very challenging design space to push in terms of horizontal expansion, innovation, good design, and this is why we don't see a lot of that in the Shaper faction. It's unfortunate, but I think that's the nature of Shaper, and this will continue as we move on into the Red Sand cycle. Well, that was not a very happy note to end on, but I hope that you've had a very good holiday season. I sure had, and to everyone out there who's watching this right now, happy holidays, and thanks for watching. I'll catch you all around in the new year. Goodbye.